Hello, and welcome to episode number 19 of the Rabe Creations podcast. My name's Nicole, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta here in Canada, where I live with my husband Barry, my son Riley, and my wonderful, beautiful, rescued Rottweiler named Grace, who happens to be asleep right on that couch. Chances are she may make an appearance in the podcast today. You will inevitably hear her throughout the podcast. I do apologize, but she's a mama's girl. She likes to be where I am, so she's right beside me. All right, first off, I would like to welcome back all of my returning subscribers. Hello. I hope you had a wonderful New Year's. I did. I was celebrating with friends and family here at the house. I hosted New Year's, and it was a complete success. Great food. My husband fired up the smoker, and we had pulled pork and smoked chicken and collard greens and cornbread and dirty rice, and it was amazing and so good. To any new subscribers, because there have been a few, welcome. I'm so glad you've decided to join us here at Rabe Creations. And if this happens to be the first time you've caught the podcast, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you do like what you see, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and come on back again. We do have a lot of fun here. Yeah. I do release a video about once every 2 weeks that deal primarily with crochet, but also with sewing, and sometimes other crafty bits and pieces get thrown in there as well. I do have an Etsy shop, so usually there are a lot of shop updates that happen as well, so I can share all of the great makes that I have in my Etsy shop as well. Alrighty. Let me see, what else do I need to tell you about? Oh, yes, well, there's going to be some changes coming up to the podcast. I know I keep talking about that, but it's true. I have decided that 2019 is the year that I take over the editing of my podcast. Up till this point, my son Riley has been chief editor of the podcast. He is, however, contemplating moving out this year. I know it means I'm going to be an empty nester. A little bit scary. But that's okay. We'll adjust. But that also means that I don't have a in-house video editor. So I'm going to have to learn to do it myself. Hopefully over the next little while, he'll be able to, train me up a little bit, so at least I have some sort of an idea of what I'm doing. It does mean that things may become a little less polished. He is pretty good at what he does. So yeah, I'm not sure it'll have all those fun intros and bouncy titles that go by and all that fun stuff that he's added in. So, but we'll see. All of the content will remain the same, and yeah, hopefully you'll continue to follow. So lastly, before we get started into the meat of the episode, I do have to apologize. If I begin coughing uncontrollably, like that, it is because, yes, I am sick. I have been struggling with this head/now chest cold for about 3 weeks now. The doctor does assure me that it is just a cold and just has to run its course. But I wish its course was done now because I've had enough. It has settled nicely in my chest now, so hence the coughing. The good news is we are communicating via the interwebs, which means I cannot share my plague with you. Although it's been interesting watching, the various podcasters out there. This seems to be a pretty normal thing right now. It seems like a lot of people across the North American continent are struggling with this cold right now, so it's a pretty good one. It's great. So again, I apologize for any untoward coughing, and I know my voice is going to sound a little odd at times as I struggle to not cough. All right. That is it. That is rambly enough for my intro. Let's get right into some finished projects. Moving into my finished projects. My finished project and what I'm wearing are one and the same today. So today I would like to share with you my completed everyday cardigan, and it is by Sorella. It is a free pattern available through Ravelry. Yeah, I've shared it as a work in progress a few times, and I did finally get it completed. It is worked in the Urban Yarn by Loops and Threads, and it is a cotton acrylic blend, which is kind of nice, a little bit different, so no wool content in this one, but it does have the cotton as a natural fiber. I really enjoy working with this yarn. If you've watched the podcast before, you may remember that this yarn had been almost a completed blanket, and I had fallen out of the love with the project, so I ripped it all back. I frogged it back down to nothing, balled everything back up, and started the everyday cardigan with that yarn. I am very pleased with how it turned out. I did have enough for the entire cardigan, so the ribbing along the bottom, the collar, everything. It's all done in that yarn. At one point I thought I might need to use a secondary yarn as well, but I did not. A little bit about the pattern. So as I said, the pattern is a free pattern available on the internet through Ravelry, and I will, as always, link down below to the links to the pattern. What can I say about this pattern? It was interesting. My sister-in-law, who also is a crocheter, she was over on Christmas Eve, because we actually did Christmas Eve at our house this year. We normally don't. You may notice also that my Christmas is not taken down yet. That's going to be happening this weekend. So one more look at my Christmas decor, my snowman collection. But anyway, so my sister-in-law was over on Christmas Eve when I was just finishing up. This was my Christmas Day wear. I finished it up just in time to be able to wear this on Christmas Day. And she recognized it because she has also made this pattern. And it's interesting because she and I had the same experience with the pattern. It is meant to be an oversized, cuddly cardigan, and that it is, without a doubt. I love it. It is great for wearing around. We've had such mild weather. Believe it or not, I just saw a fly on the windowsill from outside. So it is warm enough that our insects are still alive. This is unheard of in Calgary. But anyway, again, I digress. It is very cuddly, it is very cozy, and it worked up very nicely. I like this, how solid the fabric came out, even though it is in a larger stitch. It is not single crocheted. So yeah, overall I am quite pleased with it. The only thing that I struggled with, and it's the same thing she struggled with, which is what makes it interesting, were the sleeves and the length of the sleeves. So as I was crocheting it, I recognized that the sleeves were going to be too long. The sleeves are crocheted from the wrist up and attached at the top separately. So they're crocheted in the round but separately and then attached. So as I was going, I was recognizing that these sleeves were going to be mighty long. So I took, I believe, 5 rows completely out of the pattern, figuring that that would solve the problem. But really it didn't, and thank goodness I took those 5 rolls out, because I have had to roll up my cuffs. These cuffs are not meant to roll, so if I was to unroll the cuffs, the sleeve length is actually well beyond, I would say it's at least 2 inches beyond the end of my fingers, if not more, when I stand up. Now, because it is a cuddly, relaxed cardigan, it doesn't make that much of a difference, but if I was to make this again, or if I was recommending the pattern to others, because I do recommend it. It is a great garment, especially for someone who potentially hasn't done a lot of garment making in the past, so looking for something quick and easy to understand. This is great, but I would definitely say don't follow the stitch counts, the row counts for the arms. Potentially just do it by measurement. So measure the length of your arm from wrist to... because it is a drop shoulder as well. So from wrist to about the bottom of your armpit, and make it that long, no longer. And then you will get a cardigan that actually fits to your wrist and not this much past. But other than that, that is the only thing I can say about the pattern that that was a bit of a challenge. And even then, I mean, quickly rolling up the sleeves, it does make for, you know, a lot of bulk in the arms, but being a cuddly, cozy, snuggly cardigan, that's kind of what I expected and what I wanted. So overall, am I pleased with the pattern? Yes. Out of a 5-star rating, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5. The only thing lacking for me from a beginner pattern standpoint was the fact that the arms were somewhat out of proportion. The pattern itself, super well written, super easy to understand, nothing tricky about it. So I do totally recommend the pattern. I would also recommend the yarn, but it is no longer being made. It is a discontinued yarn, so I don't think I'll be able to recommend that and have anybody actually find it to use it. All right, from a finish projects standpoint, that is all I'm sharing with you today. I have had a number of projects on the hook, a number of projects that I am currently working on. A lot of them are my big year-long projects, as well as a couple of patterns that I am working on. Now, I know I've talked about this before, and I keep saying, I'm going to release a pattern, I'm going to release a pattern. I really am. It's just really scary to put something out there and hope that it appeals. But it is something that I'm working on. I have given myself a goal for the year. I don't set resolutions, and I have a hard time with that whole picking 9 projects or picking a word, because I find that my likes and my interests change so much during the year that I would feel obligated to make something if I was doing a pick 9, even if I didn't really want to make it anymore because it was in my pick 9. So I just don't do those. But one of the goals that I have set for myself, besides being my own video editor, is to release at least 4 patterns. So I have 2 in the works, and I've got ideas for another couple, but I want to release 1 a quarter this year to sort of help expand my brand and to challenge myself a little bit for 2019. Alrighty, so that wraps up my finished objects portion of this podcast. And if you hang on, I will be right back with my projects that I am currently working on. Be right back. All right, so I am going to share a current project that was almost a finished project for this podcast. So close, but not quite there. So Christmas Eve cast on did not happen this year because I was finishing off my cardigan, but I did do a Christmas Day cast on, and I figure that's close enough. And my Christmas Day cast on this year was the Bellatrix Shawl. It is a pattern that is done by my friend Hannah over at the Cozy Cottage Crochet podcast. She has a number of patterns that she has released now, and they are fabulous, and if you haven't checked them out, you really should. But I believe the Bellatrix Shawl was released around October, around Halloween time, and I've had it in my queue since then, and I finally got it on my hook, and it is amazingly addictive. Oh yes. So I am doing the shawlette version of the shawl. So I am working it in a fingering weight yarn. Actually 2 fingering weight yarns. The directions are there for a thicker yarn, which would of course give a larger full-sized shawl. Mine will be a shawlette or a scarf, which works out perfectly for me because I do wear sort of that scarf look almost every day at work, so it's going to work out perfectly. So let me grab it for you. Living in my yarn bowls, because it is almost like a color work project in that you are using 2 balls at the same time. You don't fasten one off when you switch between your colors. So here it is in all its glory. Now it is quite curly in spots. It has obviously not been washed and blocked because it is not complete yet. But as you can see, it is made up of these panels that are triangular shaped and attached to each other and give this really nice pointy edge to it. It is striped, so you're working from one color to the next, sort of back and forth. And as I said, you're not fastening off. You are just carrying your yarns along the very top. It does create this little curve here, which is all right. I don't mind that at all. So the pattern itself, without giving anything away, is worked primarily in short rows, which is what gives it this interesting shape. Once you've got the pattern memorized, you've got it memorized. It is so easy to remember and becomes super addictive. it has been my entertaining project for this year because I'm able to have conversations and put it down and pick it up and put it down and pick it up without having to worry about where I was or my stitch counts or anything like that. Once you have the pattern memorized, I believe there is one row that I count. Everything else is just following along. So I'm really enjoying this. Hannah, you have outdone yourself. I have one more section that I've just started in the darker colored yarn that will complete it. And it does make a full semicircle when you're done. Then I'm going to wash it and block it, obviously, so it will stretch out a little bit more. It'll be a little bit bigger than you see now. But pattern-wise, it is linked below, and it is an amazing pattern. If you're looking for something to do that's pretty darn impressive in its finished product, but not terribly challenging, so that you can sort of take it along with you. It doesn't take all of your brain power to be able to work on it and keep your counts straight and whatnot. This may be just the pattern you're looking for. I do suggest you go check it out. The yarns that I'm using two separate fingering weight yarns. So the darker color, which I am totally enamored with. It's got sort of grays, really muted colors, purples, blues, greens. It is amazing, and it's working up so well. As you all know, when it comes to hand-dyed yarns and crochet, sometimes we struggle with pooling and flashing and that sort of thing. This isn't doing that at all. It's almost like it was made for crochet, and it wasn't. I've spoken to the dyer, and it's just one of her colorways, and I love it. So it is a yarn by Red Fox Fibers here in Alberta, so a local dyer to me. It is a merino nylon blend. It is her sock yarn, and I believe her sock base is called Into the Wild. Let me just double check that. Excuse me as I reach out of screen. Into the Wild sock base, yes. So it is a 75% merino and a 25% nylon. So Red Fox Fibers. And the colorway is called On the Rocks. And I absolutely adore it. I'm not sure how it's showing up on camera yet. I guess I'll find out in a few minutes. But in person, it is absolutely beautiful. And there may be more of this in my future. Just saying. So the secondary yarn that I'm using is also an amazing yarn. It is one of the skeins of yarn that I ordered from Stranded Dyeworks. So Amy at Stranded Dyeworks, which is a hand dyeing company out of the UK. If you haven't ever watched her podcast, the Stranded podcast, you really should. She is a hoot. I love that girl. She is so much fun. She just makes me laugh, and her mom is on the podcast all the time now. She is just hysterical. Not a whole lot of crochet goes on in her podcast. It's mainly knitting and dyeing, some spinning as well, but wow. She's just I've learned a lot about yarn from watching her podcast. But anyway, I digress again. This is one of the skeins that I ordered from Stranded for my birthday last year. I treated myself to a couple of skeins of yarn. This is called Yesterday's Bouquet. And it is in their solo, or her solo sock base, which is a single. It's a single ply. And I know she has changed all of the names of her bases. They're all still the same bases, she's just changed the names. But again, as for flashing or pooling or anything like that, it is very minimal. And I love this colorway as well. So the base, in my interpretation, is sort of a pale pink color. And then it has these specks of greens and blues, little bits of teal in there. And it truly does look like a faded bouquet. It's beautiful. And the difference between the darkness of On the Rocks and the lightness of the Yesterday's Bouquet, I really like how those two colors are playing together. And I think this is going to be a shawl that I wear or a scarf that I wear on a regular basis. So from a pattern perspective, I'm not going to give it a rating yet because I'm not completed. Same with the yarns. This is still a work in progress. I have one more panel to do, and then I'm going to wash it and block it. And I am sure I will be sharing it with you on the next podcast as a finished project. But wow, super, super stoked with how nicely this is coming along. And yeah, I see myself wearing this a million times over. So I do have a couple of other projects that are on the go. A lot of them are my year-long projects, so my memory blankets, that sort of thing. And I have a project on the go that is connected to a cowl that I am running. So I'll get into that when I talk about the cowl. So that is it for projects that are on the go that I'm going to share with you this week. I know this is a little bit of a shorter episode and a little bit rushed, but that's because I know I am going to cough my head off if I try and talk too much. So I'm not sharing tons with you today. Hopefully it's enough to whet your appetite for next podcast. All right, so I'm going to step away for a few seconds and I will come back with, let me see, what have I got planned next? My goodness. Ooh, my new additions, because it's just been Christmas and I got spoiled. All right, so time to chat a little bit about some of my new acquisitions. Now, almost all of these acquisitions were gifts from my biggest supporter, and that's my husband. My husband Barry, he may, grumble and he may make jokes about the size of my stash, but he is also my biggest supporter when it comes to the podcast and all of my yarny endeavors. So I have to give him a great big thank you for all of the wonderful things that he has gifted to me for Christmas this year. So starting out with something that is currently being used for the podcast, and that is lighting. He bought me 2 soft boxes so that I can record anywhere at any time without having to try and rely on natural lighting, and it's making the world of difference. So today I'm experimenting with just one, and it's off in this direction, and I'm liking what it's doing. It's a nice lighting. Yeah, but I do have the second one, so I'm going to be experimenting a little bit more. But yes, so that was one of the great surprises that he gave me at Christmas. He also surprised me with this fantastic, beautiful yarn bowl. It is made of rosewood, and it is beautifully carved, and it has the little swirl for the yarn to come through, and it has been put to great use already doing the Bellatrix Shawl, because I needed 2 yarn bowls for that one for each ball so that they don't get all tangled. But yes, it's beautiful and I love it. He also, I told you he's an enabler, he also purchased for me a copy of Edward's Menagerie Dogs. So it's got 50 different dog crochet patterns. Almost every breed you can think of is represented in this book. Here's some little tiny pictures. I will link below if you're interested. This is by Kelly Lord from Toft Yarn. Yeah, this is one of many of the Edward's Menagerie books that she has released. I am quite impressed with some of the patterns that are in here, and I am very interested in trying some of them out. So they are amigurumi, and one of my favorite pictures in the book is the one at the very back of the book, and you'll know why in one moment. Let me just show it to you because it just made my heart sing. And my husband says I should reproduce this picture with my own amigurumi Rottweiler taken with a picture of my sweet girl, Grace. So this is not Grace, this is the dog in the book, but it sure does look an awful lot like Grace. The only big difference I can see so far is this dog has a tail and my Grace has a cropped tail. Other than that, That is my favorite breed of dog. That is the Rottweiler, and it has a Rottweiler amigurumi, so I may be trying some of the patterns out of here for sure. So again, another enabling gift from my husband. And let me see what else. Oh, the final enabling gift that my husband purchased for me and gifted to me for Christmas is to be used with my sewing endeavors. So he purchased me a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter. I didn't have one of those before, and I was still cutting everything the old-fashioned way with scissors. The rotary cutter is amazing. First pattern I cut out with it was a little rough around the edges, I have to tell you. Had to sort of get used to this new tool, but now that I'm used to it, in one evening I cut out the fabric for 9 project bags in one like 3-hour period. So it speeds up the process so much. And the self-healing mats, I tell you, they're like alchemy. You've got a razor blade that you're pretty well, a rolling razor blade, so the rotary cutter, that you're cutting your fabric out, and it doesn't even score the mat underneath. I don't know how this works, but it does. I tell you, alchemy. But it has made bag production for my shop going to be much, much faster, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So those were the enabling gifts that I got for Christmas from my wonderful, wonderful husband. I haven't purchased myself a whole lot of things. Kind of, sort of. It's kind of the truth and it's kind of not. I did buy a sweater's quantity of yarn, but I'm not considering that as purchases for myself. I have to justify this somehow. It is a sweater's quantity of yarn for my cowl that I will be talking about in the next segment. But one thing I did find at my local yarn store, which is called Yarn Twisters, by the way, and it is an amazing little store that has opened up. They have a great selection, great service. If you happen to be in the Calgary area, make sure you check them out. They are linked below. But I found this. So this is Comfort Wool, and it is a German wool. It is produced in well, it's made in Italy for H&W Germany. It is a comfort socken wool, so sock wool, and it is a self-striping. They've got a little picture of the sock there. It is a 75% superwash wool and a 25% polyamide, so nylon. And it is 100 grams and 420 meters. I am determined to figure out a sock pattern done in crochet that will utilize self-striping yarn to its fullest and come up with a sock that is self-striped like a knitted sock. Now I did buy some self-striping yarn from Louise at the Wool Baron, sorry Louise, at the Wool Baron, and I've bought 2 skeins of self-striping from her. You know, Hannah over at the Crochet Cottage podcast, she says that we're worth the good yarn, and we should be using the good yarn. In fact, side note, she is running a cowl right now called the Love Your Stash cowl, where it started, I believe, on Christmas Day or on Boxing Day, so the 26th of December, and it's any project you want to do that's using stash yarn. So you can't buy new yarn for it. It can include works in progress because that technically is part of our stashes as well. But any yarn in our stash can be used for a project. So I will be putting in my Bellatrix Shawlette into that cowl because those were both stash yarns. And she's always saying, you know what, we're worth the good yarn. Don't buy it and let it just sit there waiting for the perfect project. Use that yarn. And I agree, but I don't want to experiment with the good yarn. So I am going to save the good yarn until I figure out the pattern. And instead I'm going to use the yarn that cost me half as much to experiment with. So I look forward to trying to figure out, potentially doing up my own sock pattern. Utilizing a self-striping yarn. So there's that. And I just really, really like these colors. They're kind of autumnal. There's blues and grays and oranges and browns. I think this would be an appropriate sock for a man or a woman. Although my husband has already said, no, no thank you, but no thank you to crocheted socks. I don't get it. But yes, so I look forward to experimenting with that as well. So from a acquired standpoint, that's about all I have to share with you. Again, I have to thank my husband for his donations to the podcast with the acquisition of the lights. So thank you so much, Barry. Yeah, so I'm going to step away one more time and come back with some news about the CAL, with some news about shop updates, and to sign off for the day. So hold on, I'll be right back. All right, so moving right along, let's talk about the CAL. So right now, currently running, is the first CAL of the season for the Rabe Creations podcast. And that is a colorwork CAL. So it started January 1st and will run through the last day of February, so February 28th, I believe, this year. And the only stipulation is that it needs to be colorwork. So it can be knitting or crochet. And it needs to be colorwork. So come on over to Ravelry. I do have an open thread already in Ravelry for Chatter, and I have shared my project in there. There will be eventually a thread for finished objects as well in the Ravelry group. So if you haven't found me yet on Ravelry, come on over. That's Rabe Creations on Ravelry. I've also started using a Instagram hashtag for the CAL, and that is hashtag DRC, Rabe Creations, DRC, Colorwork, CAL, CAL 2019. I know it's a really long one, but it is what I ended up choosing. So I'm going to link that down below as well. So please go ahead and share your works in progress and your finished objects and all of that on Instagram as well, and tag me in it so we can all follow that tag as well. So that'll be kind of fun. I do plan to be, of course, drawing prizes for this this crochet along. Well, I guess it's a make along technically because knitting is allowed. So there will be one prize drawn from the Chatter thread. There will be one prize drawn from the finished objects thread. So I will have to ask that when that opens that there is no chatter in that. It is only pictures of completed projects. And there will be one prize drawn potentially from the Instagram hashtag thread. So that's kind of fun. That's something I haven't done before. Thank you, Claudia from the Crochet Luna podcast for that suggestion. Also, side note, Claudia on her last podcast, excuse me, did a rundown of lots and lots of CALs that are running currently and that are already planned for the rest of the year. So my plan is to get a calendar that I can put up in my craft studio where I can be recording who's doing what when. I always have the best of intentions when I hear people talking about their CALs, and then my memory, it's good, but it's short. And I forget about them, and then I don't end up putting my projects in, or, yeah. So I hope that by sort of keeping track on a calendar, it might help to allow me to be more interactive in those CALs. So, you know, being more interactive and more participation in other people's CALs as well. So this year's CALs for the Rabe Creations podcast are going to be mostly technique focused. So like I said, this one, the first one I'm doing for the first 2 months is all about color work. Then we may do something, you know, maybe something about cabling. I want to challenge people and myself with techniques that may be new or something that we haven't done in a while as the theme for the crochet alongs. And then we'll get a variety of projects that encompass that theme. So let me show you the project that I have chosen for my own cowl. As I said, it is a colorwork cowl, and I was absolutely flabbergasted with this sweater when I first saw it in the magazine, and it is from the Simply Crochet magazine, issue 66. It is called the Scandi Jumper, and it is designed by Fran Morgan. She does some amazing crochet sweaters. But here it is. Isn't that fantastic? That's crochet, people. I love it. Now, I will not be doing the hood. I don't want it to be a hooded sweater. And the nice thing about this hood is that it is done afterwards and it's just attached with buttons. So it is not necessarily a necessary part of the sweater. So it is crocheted from the bottom up, and then comes all the color work along the top. So it's going to take a bit for me to actually get to the color work portion of the sweater, but so far I'm liking what I'm seeing. So it is one main color and then 5 different colors that you color work up at the top. So let me show you the yarn that I have chosen to do my sweater out of. So this is all drops yarn, and I haven't even put it in a project bag. It's still living in the paper bag from the yarn shop, which is Twisted Yarn Twisters here in Calgary. I'm sorry for the crinkling. I'm trying to get all of the different colors out. So as I said, there's one main color and then a number of contrasting colors, 5 contrasting colors that you do the color work in. So the main portion of my sweater is going to be done in this color. So all of the yarns I've chosen are drops Nepal. So it is a wool and alpaca mix. It is a little toothy, but nothing that's going to be outrageous. This is going to work out to be a fairly pricey sweater because of the yarn that I'm choosing, and I get it. That's my choice. They are only $5 skeins. Sorry, I keep looking out. My son has contacted me and said, Mom, there's a parcel coming for me today. So I'm trying to keep an eye on things. Again, sidebar. They are 50 gram skeins. They are only $5 a gram, or $5 a gram. Whew, that would be really expensive. $5 a ball for each skein. But I'm suspecting that I'm going to need more than is listed in their pattern. I don't think that the length of this quite matches the length of the yarn that was used in the pattern. But that's okay. It's okay if it's a little bit more expensive. And obviously it's a pattern that you could make out of big box store yarn, no problem at all. I just really wanted the natural fibers. So there is the light gray that the entire body of the sweater and the arms are going to be made out of. Then comes the color work. Now I'm not sure in what order I'm going to be doing the color work, but these are the colors that I have chosen. And again, it's all that same drops Nepal, so that way I've got consistency in fiber content. But these are the 5 colors that I have chosen to do the color work out of. It's going to be beautiful. I am really looking forward to this. Yeah, how pretty is that? I think all of these colors with the light gray that I of course already put back in the bag, but let me pull that out too. I think it's going to be a fantastic, fantastic combination of colors, and it's going to be super warm because of the alpaca and the wool blend. So that is my project, and those are my yarns. So I look forward to keeping you updated. If you would like to see more frequent updates, then you will get on the podcast, which only gets filmed every 2 to 3 weeks. Please make sure you follow me on Instagram. That is where I am most active. So if you want more consistent updates on everything that I'm doing, please follow me on Instagram. I'm Nicole_Rabe Creations on Instagram, and I'd love to see you on there as well. So let me show you what I have done so far. I only bought the yarn yesterday, so this is truly the very beginnings of my sweater. So the sweater is constructed from bottom up. which I'll admit is a little disappointing. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for, because I really wanted to get into the color work part, and it's the last thing you do. So you work the sweater body. This is the band, the ribbed band along the bottom. So you work the sweater body from the bottom up to where the color work was going to start, and then you fasten off. Then you have to do both sleeves up to that same point. The sleeves are joined, and then you work the color work that goes around the body and ties the sleeves and shoulders in as well. So it's going to be a while before I get to the color work, but maybe that's the motivation I need. Perhaps if it started with the color work and then worked into the main color, I would run out of steam faster. I don't know. We're going to see. But this is how it is working up so far. I am so far really pleased with how this yarn is working. It is a fairly heavy yarn, but it is not bothering my skin at all, so it's not got that itch of some of my real rustic yarns do. And I am working with my Likey Driftwood crochet hook. This is the 4mm hook. You do use a slightly larger hook when you get to the color work, and that seems to be a pretty, excuse me, a pretty normal thing for color work, whether it be crochet or knitting, that you do go up a hook size when you get to the color work areas to keep your floats from getting too tight. So yeah, I am super excited about this, and I hope you are too. I really, really invite you to come over and, you know, get involved in that color work. It doesn't have to be a sweater. There's lots of smaller projects out there. I've seen color work bags, tons of crochet color work mittens coming out there. Lots of color work out there. I would love to see the project that you pick to do. So come on over, join in, challenge yourself if color work is something new to you, or if it's a technique you haven't used in a while. If it's something that you're very good at and something you do a lot, please come over and mentor those of us who are challenging ourselves. So that's that. That is the color work cowl that is coming up, or that is currently running on my Ravelry page. All right, so I have just got a little bit of a shop update to do, and then I'm going to bid you a farewell. So I actually don't have anything to show you from a shop update perspective. One of the yarn stores that I frequent, oh my goodness, fabric stores that I frequent, which is a big box fabric store called Fabricland, was having a after Christmas sale, and they sent me an email, so of course I had to go and check it out, because that's what good customers do. So off I went, and I was able to pick up a whole swack, that's a real word, you know, a whole swack of fabric that are winter themed, but not heavily Christmas themed. The Christmas season obviously is over, so I don't want to be doing up a bunch of Christmas bags now, but more of a winter theme, so snowflakes, that sort of thing. And for those of us in Canada anyway, that's still really appropriate for the next little while. So I have got, like I said earlier in the podcast, 9 bags where the fabric is all cut out, and I am just needing to sit down and whip them all together, so that will be happening within this next week. And also I have some progress keepers, beaded progress keepers that I am currently making, and I will be listing my first for sale beaded progress keepers in the Etsy shop as well. And again, that's all going to be happening within this next week. So if you're interested, come on over to Etsy, find the shop. It's surprisingly enough Rabe Creations on Etsy. And if you favor the shop, if you like the shop, you will get notifications of when new things get put into the shop. So it's a great way to stay up to date on new additions in the shop. Yeah. All right. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed your time. I hope I have inspired you to join into the cowl and to get on your color work game. Yeah. So I will see you in about 2 weeks with more cowl updates, and hopefully some more projects to show you and some more information to share. So until then, I bid you a fair adieu, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.